Alright, so now we're at the last day of notes, chapter 3. So we're going to talk about circular functions in general, which all of our trig functions are considered circular functions. So the confusing part of circular functions is even and odd functions. And what this means, an even function is a function for which f of negative x equals f of x for all the x in domain f. What that's basically saying, you have an even function. If I plug in a negative number and a positive of the same number, that I would get the exact same answer. So an example of this, you can try real quick. Try the cosine of 30 and cosine of negative 30. Plug those into your calculator and you'll see that they should equal the same thing. That's an even function. Basically means you plug in same number, one's positive, one negative, they both equal the exact same thing. They would both equal root 3 over 2, root 3 over 2. Now an odd function, on the other hand, is when you plug in negative versus a positive, they will have basically the same answer, just one will have a negative and one will be positive. So an example of this, if you take the sine of 30 versus the sine of negative 30. So here, sine of 30 equals 1/2. Sine of negative 30 equals negative 1/2. So they equal the same basic number, the main difference being that this one is positive, that one's negative. There is not a direct correlation between why this is negative and this is negative, just happens to be that case with sine. All that you really need to know is if I plug a positive number in and the negative of the same number, one of my answers will be positive, one will be negative. If you're looking at this equation, the only way to make them true, or to make this equation equal, is you have to multiply either this side or that side by a negative 1. That cancels out the negative here, which would make them the same. Or you would add a negative here, which would make them the same. And that's the part most people tend to get confused about. So even or odd, if we're going real quick, your even functions and your odd functions. Oops, that looks like a P. Even is cosine and secant. Odd is everything else. So sine and cosecant, tangent and cotangent are odd or have odd properties. And we'll talk more about that in class and why that is. If I started explaining it now, it would take 30 minutes and you would get bored. So, let's find the exact value for each of the following, knowing what we know about even or odd functions. So what this is, what I mean by that is, I'm going to plug in the sine of 2 pi over 3. I want to look that up on the unit circle. And then since this is an odd function, they're not going to be exactly the same. That means I'm going to have to change the sign of this when I find my answer. So sine of 2 pi over 3 is root 3 over 2. And I'm just going to have to make that negative because it's an odd function, so because I have to change the sign. So with an odd function, you're multiplying this answer by negative 1. With an even function, it's the exact same. So I want to take the cosine of 5 pi over 3, which is the positive version. And whatever that equals, that's my final answer. I don't have to multiply by a negative or do anything like that. So 5 pi over 3 should also be root 3 over 2 for cosine. And like I said, since it's even, you leave the sign the same. Here, odd again. So to use the unit circle, I would use positive pi over 6, find my answer to be 1/2, and then change the sign to be negative because it's an odd function. So odd function meaning I'm going to have to multiply by that negative to make the answer actually true. Oh, there is one like this on the test. Just what I would know is, since this is an odd function, that negative, if you're changing, you want theta to be a positive because it's a positive everywhere else. You just know that you have to multiply it by negative to make it the same, because it's an odd function. If it was an even function, then negative would just go away and you wouldn't change anything. So then you have, if we're working this out, cosecant of theta is sine of theta plus a negative sign, which is just minus sine, which equals 0. That's it. Alright, this is the last homework assignment before the review. Hope the quick overview at least gets you thinking about this, and then we can talk about it more tomorrow, because it is kind of a weird, goofy concept. Hope it makes some sense. See you tomorrow.